Neurogenesis. A lot of people used to think that it was impossible to regrow or grow new neurons. Neurogenesis means the growth of new neurons. And neurogenesis in the hippocampus, which is our place where our memories are formed, stored, and synthesized, along with other regions of the brain. Just a quick side note, it's probably a good idea not to take out one brain area and say, oh, that's where this happens, because the brain is networked. And the brain is networked within the blood-brain barrier, and then it's also networked with your experience of reality too. For example, your sensory receptors in your fingers are a network of your brain, and they have neurons that run, nerves that run from the sensory receptors into the spinal cord and then attached to another type of thing called an internuncio neuron, which is like a middleman neuron that goes into the spine and then up to the brain and then connects through the brain. So it's a whole network, and neurogenesis is the ability to grow new neurons. And as I'm talking about this, is one of the interesting things that comes up when you start to share is you start to have other questions unless somebody's not very confident in their ability. So what I'm going to share is that a question came up into my mind as I'm talking about this. What does it look like when a new neuron grows inside the hippocampus? What does that look like? Then how does it attach to newer neurons? Because one of the interesting things about neurons, as we're talking about networks, is they attach to other neurons and create connections that that form memories, that form thoughts, that form sensations. And so what does that process look like? Because I know that when neurons attach to each other, there are three different types of a connection. There's a weak connection, meaning the connection has been formed, but it's not used very much. And there's a strong connection, which means that the connection is used very regularly. When you remember something over and over and over again and turns it into long-term memory, for example, a language, then that's a strong connection. And then there's a silent connection, a connection that has been formed at one point, was either weak or strong, and then fell out of use and is now silent. And that is how you don't remember some things. But you would be able to remember them if the trigger arose, which gets really interesting into the recognition of trauma, reworking of trauma, because often what happens to somebody who has been traumatized emotionally or physically, remember it is difficult to say that trauma happens physically without emotion, because say you get in a car accident, emotion is a key evolutionary adaptation to help you deal with that trauma. So you can't separate emotion and physical experiences. And then if you think about it, if you've ever been in an accident, oftentimes you don't remember that accident. You don't remember the details. Things get fuzzy. Your adrenaline kicks in, and your ability to form memories changes. This also happens with emotional, mental, physical trauma. For example, early childhood trauma. A lot of times memories are really difficult. You repress memories, and then you essentially don't touch them. So the connection becomes silent because your body is trying to protect itself. Your mind is trying to protect itself because that thing that happened was so horrific that you couldn't deal with it. And now we're going to go from neuroscience, and if I have made any errors in my elicitation of what neuroscience tells us, please let me know. My point here is to grow my knowledge and to grow your knowledge. It's not to be right, so please correct me if I've run anything wrong. And now we're going to go into the area of yoga and samskaras and subtle impressions that are left on us on what's called our energy body. Something that the yogis found out about, which before they had the tools of science to understand what was going on, and still nobody's looked into the energy body in a scientific way. It remains to be seen whether it can be measured. Interesting, and it is an interesting discussion to be had, because I experienced this energy body, but how do I know whether I've experienced it because someone has primed me? Because I've gone to many yoga classes and they talked about this, or whether it is an actual thing that exists. regardless of that, the model is very helpful. When you have something that happens to you, it leaves an impression both on your body, your physical body, and on your energy or emotional body. That could be an energy body. That the emotional connection could be an energy connection. We might be able to find out more about the energy body through studying the emotions, is what I'm trying to say. So something happens to us. We have a very difficult situation that we run into, and our body basically stores it for later. You might recognize this if you've had early childhood trauma, because it forms a memory and you form a story about what happened, and you say, I had this happen to me, someone else did this to me, and that creates this whole story, and that story itself is protecting you from actually feeling what happened, and that's stored in your body. So one of the great joys of this work is that we grow older, we get some time in between the trauma and our current moment, and we're able to integrate that. And the way that we integrate that is through digestion. We digest the experiences. So something that can be really helpful in this is to ask yourself questions, maintain your connection with the present moment, and then almost exploring that memory, if you have any connections, trying to find those silent connections and making them at least weak. And trying to both stay in the present moment, but then using the faculty of the mind, also go into the past and feel what happened and ask for more of it. Because the primary thing we need to change or integrate is our resistance to what happened, because it's not happening right now. Our brains think it's happening right now because we're stuck in the past. PTSD means that we are stuck in the past, so we want to bring our whole being into the present. And so you want to witness it. So recognize that there is a part of you observing all of this, observing everything that's happening. And so the more we can identify with that observer, the more we can witness these difficult and horrific things that happen to us and allow them to run out and to no longer be stuck inside of our body. This can be really helpful for chronic pain. I've learned from this pain science, the science of pain, that chronic pain is not necessarily a symptom of tissue damage. It can be. It can be related to car accidents, it can be related to acute injuries, but it's not always. And it's very important to recognize this, and it's a hard one to recognize because the story inside our head says this pain is real, and it is real. But that gets into the nature of the body and the mind, and everything you feel is not actually at the tissue, it's inside the mind. And I'm not saying this means it doesn't exist, but your body is creating a map of your mind. Your mind is creating a map of your body. The mind is creating a map of your body. So when you feel somebody touch your fingers, you're not feeling them touch your fingers. Your brain is creating an image of them feeling your fingers. There are some things that happen in reflexes. So if, for example, you touch something hot and you immediately pull away before your conscious mind has, that happens in the spinal cord. That happens at the local tissue, goes to the spinal cord and goes back. But then the feeling happens in the brain. The creation of an image of something happening happens in the brain. Now forgotten my initial point. Hopefully this is helpful. This was a long rambling video summing up my own experiences. I'm not a therapist. I'm nothing special. I've just experienced quite a bit of trauma, and so I've used I've learned a lot about how to work in a positive way, and I'm getting to the roots of the trauma in my own body, and I'm clearing those out, and in that process my body is becoming lighter. My ability to experience difficult things in the present moment is becoming better. My ability to deal with stress is becoming wholly different than I could have ever conceived possible years ago. And so hopefully this is helpful, And please let me know if you have any questions, further things. I'm not an expert, but I have done a lot of this work, so I want it to be of value to others. So let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.